At MedStory, we take privacy seriously and follow all healthcare privacy laws. Some details may be changed to protect confidentiality. The views expressed are solely those of the individual speaking and do not represent the views of their employer.
And I feel like there's only one way for us to end this.
Oh boy, okay. Let's do it. What do you think?
It's either with a howl or a rage scream.
All right. Let's go howl. I don't know how my howl is, but let's give it a go.
All right. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Ow! 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 I was on a 28-hour PICU shift. It's 2 a.m. I had just intubated a baby. It was a pretty critical scenario, and I just needed a couple moments of quiet. And when I got into the call room, I had my first panic attack. That sounds so interesting because medicine has tamed the me out of me. And I didn't believe this at first until I saw it happen. It was truly a weekend that changed my life and the trajectory of my career.
Welcome back to the MedStory podcast, where we share the stories of the greatest minds in science and medicine. I'm Spencer Locke, and today's conversation brings us into the middle of the night during residency after a critical moment in the ICU. A moment that stopped everything and forced a physician to ask one question that most of us avoid. When did I become so disconnected? That physician is Dr. Jessica McIntyre, and that question led to an incredible journey. One on a mountaintop, a circle of women, an experience called the Wild Woman Project. This is the MedStory podcast, and that, my friends, is where our story really begins. Wild Woman Project. They say here it's be moved, be fed, be wild.
Yes.
It sounds like a place that we probably wouldn't see too many physicians at.
Yeah.
But this is something I know that you've attended. But before we talk about the specific event, I want to go back to maybe a specific moment that may have led you to wanting to attend something like this.
Absolutely. I'm so excited that we're starting with this because this is something I just truly get so excited about. And so I had no idea what the Wild Woman Project was. I'd never heard of it, never thought about attending a retreat before until my second year of residency. I was on a 28-hour PICU shift. It's 2 a.m. I had just intubated a baby. It was a pretty critical scenario, and I just needed a couple moments of quiet. So I decided to escape to the call room, for lack of a better term. And when I got into the call room, I had my first panic attack, and I didn't know what I was experiencing. I felt nausea and hot and like I had to go to the bathroom. And I actually tried to convince myself it was just gastro because, we're physicians and that's what we do. We have to power through everything. And then when I sat down and realized that my throat was kind of feeling like it was closing and I was starting to hyperventilate, I realized it for what it was, that it was my first panic attack. And in that moment, I thought, why am I panicking? Like, I love the ICU. I've intubated kids before. And then I realized it was because I had become so disconnected from who I was that in that moment, I actually didn't know who I was. I just felt like I was identifying as the doctor. And I'm not even sure why it hit me in that moment. So I did what I feel like any millennial does. And I turned to my phone and I was like, how to find yourself, woman, which is probably the most hilarious Google search I've done, but also led to the Wild Woman Project. And I didn't find anything on the first couple of pages, so I'm just kind of scrolling through. And then I see the Wild Woman Project, and it's just weird enough and interesting enough to where I thought, I might click on that. And when I pulled it up, it was a simple landing page. It just said, we want to promote women to getting back in touch with their raw, authentic, and true selves and their untamed self. And I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds so interesting because medicine has tamed the me out of me, And I just signed up for their email list. And then a couple of months later, I found myself on a mountaintop with 150 women feeling completely uncomfortable. And it was truly a weekend that changed my life and the trajectory of my career.
Oh my gosh, I'm excited to dive into this. So I want to go back to this panic attack that you're having.
Mm-hmm.
You went in, you knew something was wrong, eventually was able to identify it as a panic attack.
Mm-hmm.
Now, You said then you got to do, it sounds like, some internal digging. How long did that take from the onset of the panic attack for you to realize that you need to start searching for something to really find yourself again?
I would say if I think back to that call room experience, I was very lucky that I had about 2 hours that I wasn't needed on the unit, to where I just kind of sat there and was trying to do some deep breathing and work through it, and then was Googling, panic attack symptoms, even though I know all of them. And then I just thought, wow, this is why I'm having this. And so I would say it only took about a half hour from me starting the panic attack to realizing that it was disconnection that was causing that, which is actually a pretty short time period. But then it took months and years, and I feel like the journey is still ongoing for, really reconnecting to yourself. I feel like we're never really done doing that, because it is just something that you continually have to do and work on.
Absolutely. Well, I want to share, because I've actually had a panic attack myself once.
Did you Google the symptoms?
I did. Oh, I didn't have my phone at the time. I was actually I was taking surfing lessons, and then I was like, I feel terrible right now, and my legs got numb, and I literally felt like I was dying. And I was like, I told my friend, I was like, you gotta get the lifeguard for me, and got the lifeguard. They came over and they got me into the truck. And they're like, okay, we're going to drive you over to the lifeguard stand. They drive me over to the lifeguard stand. I'm about to get out of the car, like I'm hyperventilating, and I look up and we're parked literally right next to a wedding on the beach. And I remember looking up, I see the bride walking down the aisle, and I look at the lifeguard and I said, I'd rather die than ruin this woman's
Oh
life.
my gosh, that's so funny. Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's hysterical.
But then I was like, we waited it out, went to the hospital, and I ended up finding out that it was a panic attack. And I almost had a sense of guilt, being like, oh man, I couldn't have handled that myself. And did you have any experience of that? Being like, I've already handled these high pressure situations, so like, why is this happening to me now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually feel like that's very common. And on the physician end of things, I experience that with my patients a lot. If I'm walking a kiddo or a teenager through a panic attack, there is sometimes a sense of guilt or shame with that, which is really something that we need to normalize, because it's just part of the human experience. And I would say for me, I didn't have well, actually, I did have guilt, and I was afraid to share it with people that I had that experience at first. But I didn't want to let it inhibit, I didn't want to let it take away from my ability to do my job. So what I actually did over the next couple of weeks was low-key exposure therapy on my days off. I was really afraid that going back to the ICU was going to trigger it. And so I had a weekend off, and I went in on the weekend just to take my friends some coffee in the ICU. And, they all thought that I was just being super friendly. But the reality was I was trying to expose myself to the environment because I was so afraid of not being able to perform.
Wow. That is really wise of you to do in the moment. Probably a little scary, but do you feel like ultimately that really helped you to so you didn't miss a beat, and once you got back into it, you were able to do your job?
Yeah, that did help me a lot. And then I had a really interesting experience pretty quickly after that, where I shared with a very, very close resident friend that I was having the panic attack, or that I was suffering with panic attacks, and I was developing some anxiety. And they actually disclosed suicidal ideation to me during that conversation, and said that, that they had a plan and everything. And we went together to our program coordinator and were able to get into therapy for both of us starting within a week. And that moment truly changed my life about the power of vulnerability, because if I hadn't have had that conversation with my colleague, I really fear for, what could have happened. 33% of physicians have depression, and 50% of those with depression have suicidal ideation. And it's the number one cause of death for residents. And so, not to be too heavy, but I feel like I had this very fast, no mental health challenges, developed panic, realized that it was disconnection, and then within a couple of weeks realized I am never going to be silent about it again, because us being able to talk about it and be vulnerable is truly a superpower for healing.
What was going on in your mind? Like, what were you feeling when your colleague told you that?
I honestly can still feel my stomach just like hitting my feet. It just fell out. And, in that moment, you want to be so supportive. And so I thanked my colleague. I said, wow, thank you so much for sharing this with me. That just takes so much courage. I'm so glad that we're talking about these things, and let's go get help. What do you think? Let's go together. And it really was a turning point. And I still have like fears over that. I had a very unfortunate training where I had 3 medical school colleagues actually complete suicide. And that was at a school that actually had the opt-out program where you are assigned therapy session every semester. And so all of the med students had a designated therapy session. It was amazing. I think it helped us more, it helped destigmatize seeking therapy when you know that all of your colleagues are also going to therapy. And yet we still had that just absolute, traumatic experience.
I think we got to take a moment and let that sink in. You had 3 colleagues take their life while they're in medical school.
4 years. Mm-hmm.
If that isn't a testament to something being wrong with the system, I don't know what else could be, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's where we see things like this. And with those people whose lives are lost, the best way we can honor them is to speak up and start saying, all right, let's start creating some change in this world.
Absolutely. That reminds me of the Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation and Emotional PPE Project and all the amazing work they're doing.
Oh, that's amazing. So let's now fast forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here. And I want to go back to the moment that you decide to sign up for this Wild Woman project.
Yep.
Was there any reluctant to hit that button and purchase it?
No, I was so excited about it because the tickets sell like hotcakes. So I had to set an alarm on my phone and I signed up for it. And when I got my ticket, I said to my husband, babe, I'm going to this Wild Woman project. He's like, what? What's that? I'm like, yeah, it's camping on the top of this mountain. It's 150 women. We like make this tent city. And then he immediately was like, I need to teach you how to pitch a tent. I was like, yes.
So take me there. Take me there right as soon as you arrive. What are you seeing? What are you feeling?
The first thing that I felt was just this sense of empowerment because you're just in the middle of the woods. And traditionally, when you think about pitching tents and camping, there tends to be a male figure involved with that. I don't know, it just tends to be more of a societally masculine thing. And to see all of these women individually putting up their tents, helping each other out, people that you don't know just coming on over and being like, hey, let's do this together, And then what was absolutely insane to me at the time that now is like one of my favorite things about the Wild Woman Project. It's called Wild for a reason. This woman just let out this howl, like, oh, and the whole entire woods of women responded. And I just remember being like, what is going on? We're howling on top of this mountain. And I didn't do it that first time because it felt so atypical and abnormal. And now when I show up to a Wild Woman Fest, because I go every year, I'm a women's circle facilitator. I'm like the first person to be like, ow, ow, ow. It's so fun.
What do you think it is? Why does that feel so good to do that?
I think it's because society has told us to speak in a certain way and to be quiet and, to be an adult. And that is such a loud inner child, raw, authentic moment. And it's really interesting because the AAP just had their annual meeting and they had a shared scream of rage, And so it was this whole room, I think it was like 10,000 pediatricians just like, and it made its rounds on social media because it was such a powerful movement to allow yourself to do that. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I've been doing monthly for the last 6 years. And it does just feel so good to just let it out. Highly recommended.
I don't know what it is. I agree. It's something my partner has brought to me where we'll do family screams and we'll scream at the top of our lungs. And it's like, I don't know what it is. Because at first you're like, I'm shy. I don't know if I want to do this. This is dumb. And then you do it and you're like, that actually felt pretty good.
I love to hear that.
And
do you guys have
yeah, go ahead.
do you have something that triggers it? Or is it just like Yeah, I feel like we need a family scream right now.
Yeah, yeah, like kind of when like the tension gets up and you're like, we kind of just
Mhm.
got to release something right now. And so it's really impromptu.
Mhm.
And then I've started doing it sometimes just by myself. I find that my favorite place to do scream is in the car. Where you can just do it at the top of my lungs, and I don't know what it is, but there's something about it that just feels really free.
Yeah, I love that. We make sure that we do like a howl every full moon because that's like part of the Wild Woman Project thing. And I'm very lucky because I live in a neighborhood, but there's a lot of coyotes here. And so the coyotes actually howl a lot. And so if I go out and like really let it out outside, I don't think the neighbors are like, what's she doing down there? I think it just is like, oh, they're like the coyotes are out early tonight. Cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Do they ever howl back to you when you do it?
Sometimes I do it with the coyotes, but my neighbors haven't howled back yet.
All right, that's the next step.
Yeah.
So while you're at this Wild Woman Project, tell me about it. Obviously was a very transformational experience for you. Talk to me about that transformation during and then after.
Sure. So I think one of the most profound things was being one of two physicians there, and I had been in this bubble of healthcare providers for the last 8 years, and I hadn't had an opportunity to really socialize with a lot of people that were on these totally different paths. And so being in this environment where there were so many people leading different like alternative life like just leading different lives and walking different roads was really amazing for me to just really get out of that white coat bubble and realize that we are all experiencing the same things. It's all part of the human experience. Like a lot of what I go through and what I'm frustrated about or what's troubling me, a lot of people are also experiencing that just in different ways, right? And so that was the first thing that was really great, was just putting me in an environment where I could reconnect with people that weren't the same as me, And then I would say the second thing was that it really taught me some new terminology about what I was looking for, such as a safe, sacred space. Like I didn't know what a safe space looked like or felt like or how to create that until I was in one and realized, wow, like this is profound, And being in a space where we actually have a rule for Wild Woman Project where you cannot give advice unless you are specifically asked for advice. And as a physician, that's hard because that's what I get paid to do for a living, and give a lot of it for free sometimes. And so the art of being able to listen and to witness, which was a term that I didn't know what that was, really allows people to be seen and heard and valued in a way that is so deep that I didn't understand before.
Wow. So what does that look like? Because you go through this experience where you're like, okay, finally, I can be untamed. I can be free.
Mm-hmm.
Then the weekend ends and you go back to work.
Mm-hmm.
What happens next?
I think after that first time, I went back to work and realized all of the restraints that society had put on me, right? And then slowly over time, I just started really thinking about societal constructs in a way that I didn't have before. And then the more that I started going to women's circles, the more I actually was able to start thinking for myself in a really positive way, because I was able to say, hey, let's break down the societal construct. What about it do I agree with? What about it would I love to see there be progress on? And what about it do I just like want to throw in the trash and not look back, And so now, like, if people are like, what do you like to do for fun? Breaking down societal constructs in conversation is literally like one of my hobbies. I love it.
Is there any like constructs that you love to talk about or that seem to kind of recur?
I think that so I don't like the term work-life balance. Actually, I think we should use the term work-life harmony or work-life integration. So I like to talk about how that looks and filling like your ego versus your soul cup a lot. And then for me, I'm really thankful that I was able to like learn how to use the muscle of breaking down societal constructs, because years later, when we went through our infertility journey, I had the biggest societal construct, I think, of my life to break down, which was woman should be mother. And that, was something that when you're not able to achieve that, how do you redefine yourself as a woman, as a person, as a contributing member of society? And what does that look like for you as an individual versus what ideas did society put on you for that?
What does that look like for you?
For me, it was a really hard journey to get through. However, I realized that I was able to birth things in different ways. And for example, Women Physicians Collective feels like such a beautiful thing, an entity for me to create. And I feel very grateful that my husband and I were able to take a hand of cards that we did not anticipate being dealt and both find things that bring us personal joy that we otherwise might not be able to experience had we walked the path of parenthood. Of course, it took years to get to that phase, and I had a lot of internal things that I had to do to get there. However, being on the other side of it now is so rewarding and fulfilling. And I think that that's something that I don't see a lot of when people talk about fertility. They just talk about the end result is always a living baby, and that's amazing, and that's what we wanted for so long. But it would have been really helpful for me to hear stories of women who ultimately were not successful, but still were successful at the end goal, which is a fun and happy and fulfilling life.
It's a big reason why I'm a big believer in the storytelling. And, I think a lot of people are afraid to tell those stories, but all it takes is for you to hear one other woman going through something like that and be like, I'm not alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that feeling can feel so incredibly, profoundly powerful. So now we've mentioned the Women's Physician Collective. I want to dive into this. Let's start with the idea of it and why you decided to come up with this idea.
Sure. So after I experienced women's circles and how amazing that they were, I decided that I wanted to start hosting them. So I went through the facilitator training in 2019, and I started hosting women's circles online. And then the pandemic hit right as I was about to bring them in person. And so I continued to do them online during the pandemic. And then I started doing them in person in my local community. And then I realized that women physicians would benefit so much from having this space, but we feel really awkward sharing things sometimes in groups of people that might not understand. Like maybe we make our story a little easier to stomach for the general population, or maybe we sugarcoat it, or maybe we make a lot of excuses about why we had to miss our kids' basketball games, or why we, weren't able to, why we worked while we had the influenza, right? And so I realized that for women physicians in particular to feel really safe, the easiest thing to do would be to create a container specifically for them where they didn't have to explain why they found themselves in whatever situation that they were in. And so I kind of combined my community building with women's circles to create Women Physicians Collective.
That's amazing. So what does that look like? Say if a woman physician decides to join this, what does it look like for them?
So I wanted to get something off of traditional social media. So it's its own private platform, and there's no content overload or ads or anything like that. You just show up. It's all verified women physicians, and we have 2 live events per month. There is I have what's called the Empowered Woman CME series, which is a 12-credit series that goes throughout the year that specifically answers the questions that we want to know about, like how to take care of our bodies. So I have women physicians giving talks on sleep hygiene for women physicians and pelvic floor dysfunction and the spectrum of it, with a pelvic floor physical therapist actually coming in to do a crash course session. And even things like moral injury versus moral distress and figuring out how to move through that. And so I'm really excited because it's the first CME that I've gone to as a pediatrician that wasn't on pediatrics, and I think it's going to be really fun to kind of combine the subspecialties to bring people together to teach us how to take better care of ourselves as doctors. And then the second live event every month is either a women's circle or a creative fun pop-up where we're doing, art as a healing modality or a sound bath or just something that we might not seek out on our own that could be something really fun for us to experience in community.
Is this something that's going to be offered virtually or in person or a hybrid?
Yep. So it's primarily virtually. I mean, in the future, I would love to have meetups and different things like that, maybe a retreat here and there. But right now, one of the challenges I have with conferences is that we go to this conference or retreat and it's 3 days. And you make these awesome relationships and you're like, I want to stay in touch with that person. And then you go back to your normal life. And the reality is we usually don't, keep those relationships rolling. And so Women Physicians Collective offers an opportunity for ongoing community building and support and conversation in a small setting to where we can really get to network with each other and create those friendships.
Wow. I love this idea so much. I think we need much more like this.
Yeah,
so,
thank you.
Move me down to, I want to go from doctor to entrepreneur because this is a business.
Yeah, that
right?
It is. And wowzer.
Wowzer. Tell me what the first step is for you for building this thing out.
So the first step for me was failing. And so during COVID, I created the largest Facebook group for physicians and APPs. We had over 150,000 people in the Facebook group. And so I thought, hey, I know how to do a Facebook group. I'm going to do that. And so I started a Facebook group for this maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. And I got about 200 women in it. However, no one was participating. And I couldn't figure out why. And then I thought, maybe it's because we're kind of tired of showing up to Facebook or the Facebook overload, or, you get on for one thing and then you go down like 18 rabbit holes and you're like, wait, why did I sign on? And so I realized I think I need to do some different platform. And so after that failure, I realized, why am I not offering women's circles with this too? Because I hadn't been offering women's circles before. And then I kind of created what I wanted to do, did a beta test over the summer, which also failed. And I think this is actually very freeing to become an entrepreneur because I have my primary job and I am not relying on this for income. I'm looking at this as like, how can I create something that I really think should exist in the world? And for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of failing because I just want this to be out there. And so I've been learning so much from the failures and talking with women physicians about what they actually want. And I was able to use that to now put together the added bonus of CME. So it's reimbursable, which is awesome, and offer something that's really going to combine connection, community, circles, CME all in one space.
I love to say, fail forward, fail fast.
Yeah, I love that. I've never heard that.
So because you're right, when you're an entrepreneur, your goal always for all entrepreneurs is to take your idea to concept that can be tested. And what is the fastest way to do that? Where it's called an MVP or minimal viable product. Like, how do I build this out and test it? And you're going to fail. It's going to happen, but you're going to learn something along the way. Kind of like, it's like how they develop pharmaceuticals. Like it's the scientific method. It's you come with a hypothesis, you test, you learn, you retest. And it's very similar, except for I think a lot of healthcare workers don't realize the mental strain that can put on you. As this is different. People are normally come to you. You have no problem finding patients throughout the healthcare system, but now you have to go out and find people yourself. So talk to me about what your methods are. How do you plan to find these women and bring them into this circle and let them experience it?
Yeah, I'm taking tips, Spencer. So I am taking tips. Marketing actually has been the hardest thing that I've found because I'm so respectful that so many Facebook groups say, no self-promotion, which I totally agree with. But then I realized the only downfall of creating this awesome thing was that I had to get on social media. And so I hadn't had an Instagram. I had never made a reel. And so learning how to do that has just been exactly like standing under the waterfall of M1 anatomy, where you're just like, oh my God, what are all of these terms and muscles, And so that has been really hard. Building an email list, it has been just something I've never done before. And I said to my mom, I think I'm having imposter syndrome for the first time because amazingly, I've never had imposter syndrome with medicine because I just felt very well trained and prepared. And that's when my mom said to me, "You're not an imposter. You just haven't done it yet. You're just learning, you know?" And so I was like, "Oh, thanks, Mom. Like, that was some good advice right there." So that's kind of where I'm at is just, I'm using word of mouth for right now. I'm building my email list. I'm having these amazing conversations with women physicians online. I have the president-elect of American College of OBGYN is actually going to be leading our advocacy session in January. And so I have made some really awesome connections. And now is just figuring out how to, show the value to women physicians in a world where we're always trying to be sold something, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think that especially when it comes to imposter syndrome, which I think is something that we all experience at some point in our life, one thing that has been helpful for me in that is saying, I will continue to feel this way if I am promoting something that I don't truly believe in, right? But once you realize, like, wait a minute, I'm trying to send a message to reach physician women and to help them do a non-traditional path so that they can free themselves of the burden that is on them. Like, that is an incredible mission, right? And that's something that is very true to your heart. And so as long as you kind of stick to your why and keep going, like people, after talking with you, it's impossible for someone not to resonate with you. You can tell that you're
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And my husband said, "Are you tired of posting on Instagram yet?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just getting started. Like, I'm learning how to do it, And I think that's true. Like, I mentioned the ego versus soul cup before, but like this is something that really fills my soul cup. And so it gives me energy, right? And so instead of being like, oh, this like content plan, or I have to do this or that or the other thing, it's like, oh, no, this is actually energizing because it is something that I'm passionate about and that I see will bring great value.
Ah, that's awesome. So tell me, when is this launching?
So this is launching. The community officially opens on January 1st. And on January 7th, we have our first CME session. And then from there, it's rolling admission. So whenever women physicians are able to join or hear about us and want to join the club, then we're happy to accept them on in.
And if they are hearing this, where could they find that information?
So great question. So on Instagram, I'm at Women Physicians Collective, and I love chatting with people. And so please always feel free to DM me. There's also links in the bio, of course, to kind of learn more about WPC and what we're about and what you actually get in the community, because it's a lot more than we were able to cover here today. And then also www.womenphysicianscollective.com will lead you down a lovely little journey of different thought processes that I've had along the way.
I love that. Now, before we go, there will be some women physicians that are listening to this. And they may say, maybe I'm not ready to join that community, but I know that I'm suffering and something's going wrong with me and I need to change. What do you want to say to those women?
One, amazing job just recognizing that, because I feel like so many of us can be in denial for so long about where we're at, or we're either just so disconnected that we might not realize we need a change. And if I had one piece of advice for how to get rolling on the change, it would be to get to have fun with it and get super clear on your values. Like, print a list off. I even have this, we can link it to the show notes. It's, a list of values and get really nitty gritty. Like, which of these 3 to 5 values do I care about right now in my life? Because you might really surprise yourself. And then I have what I call the ACE approach, which is how I approach all my decision making, which is where I say, is this aligned with my values right now? Does this make me feel connected or disconnected? And does this give me energy or does this take away energy? And if I can have a positive answer to 2 of those 3 things, then it's usually a go ahead for me. And if they're all no's or 2 of them are no's, then I'm like, that's probably not in my best interest right now. And of course, I had to approach it a little nerdy, like with an algorithm, but that actually helped me figure out how to make decisions in a much faster and more positive way.
That is incredible advice. Well, J-Mac, I can just tell you that I have so much appreciation for the approach that you've taken and the bravery that you've showed, taking a very non-traditional path, one that a lot of healthcare providers may brush off as something that's just woo-woo, but it's
Hmm.
not. It's something that can be really profound and really deep. And so I just want to thank you for coming on and really sharing the story.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've really appreciated our conversation. And I feel like there's only one way for us to end this.
Oh boy. Okay. Let's do it. What
It's
do you think?
it's
Say
either
it.
with a howl or a rage scream.
All right. All right. Let's go howl. I don't know how my howl is, but let's give it a go.
All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Ow! Ow, ow! All right, thank you
Hopefully we
so
didn't,
much.
hopefully we didn't blow out people's ears there, but thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thanks for listening to the MedStory podcast, where we share the stories of the greatest minds in science and medicine. I'm your host, Spencer Locke, with a special thanks to our executive producer, Shina May. Our music comes from Blue Dot Sessions and the Descript Audio Library. The MedStory podcast is made possible by MedStory Studios and listeners like you. So if you'd like to support us, please leave a review. It means more than, and if you have a story to share or want to produce a podcast of your own, reach out to us at info@medstorymedia.com. We'll see you in the next episode.